Welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter. I am a curator in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is embedded in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. We call the Schoenberg collection, or the Schoenberg Institute, we call it SIMS. So SIMS is a research and development institute focused on manuscripts studies, pretty broadly defined. So we have a lot of Western manuscripts and also non-Western manuscripts. We digitize them all, and we also do a lot of digital projects. Coffee with the Codex is our weekly outreach program. So once a week, I get on Zoom and I do a little show and tell with manuscripts from our collection. So it is informal. If this is your first time, you're very welcome. If you have questions, you can type them in the chat and I will answer them as I can. Today's manuscript is MS Codex 722. Actually, it's oversized MS Codex 722. So this is a big one. Oversized just means it's too tall to sit on the regular shelf. So it has to go to a special shelf, which is taller. So I'm not sure exactly how tall it is, but it is a big book and it's very thick here. So this is a big one. So this is going to be fun to look at. MS Codex 722 is a dictionary of grammatical forms and definitions of theological, religious, and secular terms arranged alphabetically. And we'll see that when we start getting into it. The title of it in Latin is Expositiones difficilorum vocabularum de bibliotheca per ordinem alphabeti. And what this means is essentially it's presentations of difficult vocabulary from the library, which I think means from books, just from general books in alphabetical order. So that's exactly what it says it is. So it is a sort of a practical book, but it is pretty in the way that manuscripts written around this time are. So when was it written? I can't just say that. It was written in France, in Royaumont, and we do know where it was written because it has a colophon at the end. But this is a note that the scribe wrote that said where they wrote it. And it was written in about 1350. So this is mid 14th century France. Most of the text is in Latin, but it looks like there is Old French in some places. So we'll see if we can see the Old French. It also, we can see here pasted into in the inside of the front cover are some descriptions from previous sales. So one of the interesting things about this manuscript is that it was at one point in the collection of Sir Thomas Phillips. So Sir Thomas Phillips, you might have heard of him. If you haven't, no fear, I will tell you. So Sir Thomas Phillips was an Englishman in sort of the late 19th century, and he collected books. And when I say he collected books, I mean he had like tens of thousands of books. I think at one point he had 60,000 manuscripts, right? So he had a lot. We have over 200 items in our collection that were once owned by Phillips. And that is not unusual. So books from his collections are in the British Library. They're in the Bodleian. They're all over the place. Often they're signed. This one, it looks like this one doesn't have a signature. I'm not sure how we know that this was in his collection. He usually would sign it or put in a book plate. But anyway, in the record it says that, and I'm going to trust the record. We purchased it in 1955, so this has been in our collection for over 60 years. All right, so we start out with some kind of introduction to the text. So we get a very pretty little initial with some illumination. So that's very nice. There are also these sort of interesting triangular notes in the margin. I'm not entirely sure what is happening. Sometimes when you see things like this, it means the scribe skipped a line And so they've come back and sort of put it in a decorative way. It seems unusual that there would be 3 in a row, so it may be that it's commenting on the text. But in any case, it's an attractive kind of opening. And then we have a very typical look to it. So the writing is in 2 columns, and we have these alternating blue and red initials with blue and red penwork sort of decorating a little bit. And then there's a little rubrication, a little bit of red. The pages have been ruled. That means that there are frames drawn around the page and also lines for the text to be written on, which is how the scribes were able to keep the line straight. So if you look in between the column, you'll see these lines going across, and they go all the way across. There are also lines across the bottom, and you can see there's some kind of note. I'm not entirely sure, again, what that is, but it's been written right in the center where these lines cross, and then there's I think that's probably a signature, which is numbering the choir. The choir being the booklet that's formed by flat sheets that are folded together, and then that's bound together to make the book. So there are lots of choirs in a book. This is the first one. So there's sort of a lot going on even at the start. And this is pretty much what the manuscript looks like. So all of these are A's. We're an A, so we're looking at definitions of words that start with A. And helpfully, if we look over here, the scribe has also written the word or maybe a related word out in the margin, so we can see it here, although only a couple of times. Now this is something where there's something that's been left out. If we look here, when I say left out, I mean the scribe didn't write it and then he noticed. So there's this little thing that looks like there's like a line with 2 dots. And then if you look here in the text, there's a line with 2 dots. And this means these words should go in there. So that was left out. And then on the other hand, we have words that have been written out and someone has come through and drawn through them. So what this is telling me is that this is a book that readers are interacting with in some respect. Like this is actually a book that's being used, which is pretty neat. We have more of these triangular notations in the margin. There's another one over here on the facing page, and also a couple more words that are being put in there that have been left out. So a lot of additions and deletions, and we're only on folio 2 here. The manuscript has been digitized, so if you want to see higher resolution, if you want to get a better look, there is the link again to the record, so you can take a look at that. And if you have any questions, again, or alternatively, if you know a lot about this manuscript or this genre, please pipe up, because sometimes I have a lot to say, and this one I don't actually have a whole lot to say about it. What I'm going to do is sort of walk through and point out sort of what I'm seeing at the time. Okay, we have a question. What are the red O at the end of some words? So I noticed that too. Let's take a look so we can see what we mean, because I'm pretty sure I know. And interestingly, okay, so here we are. We're back to the first page, and here they are, these little O's, red O's at the end. And then I think there are some on the second page as well. We see them. What they're doing, it looks to me, is they're filling out the line. So it's decoration that's filling the line out, so you're not getting empty lines. However, I had to come back several pages to find them because it looks like at some point, that some point being the third page, they stopped because now we have empty lines. So that was work that that wasn't finished, and I'm pretty sure that that's all. That's all that is. But it'll be interesting to see if that comes back, or if there's something else. In some manuscripts, I'm thinking of like Bibles particularly, and a little fancier manuscripts, you also get those, but they're more decorative. So instead of just red zeros, they would be sometimes like illuminated bars that are sort of put in. So follow-up question, could this mean the book was done in different workshops? It could mean different workshops. It definitely means different stages to the work. So probably there was the first stage would have been the preparation of the page. So that would have been the ruling and the framing and all of that. And then the next stage would have been the writing of the text in the black ink. So that would have come next. And then after that, you would have the initials being added and the decoration, and probably like in some places here there are paragraph marks. So here's a blue paragraph mark and a red one that would have been added, I think, close, either at the same time or close to that time. And then clearly the last stage was adding the bars, and maybe they got to the third page and said, this is not worth the time and effort. We've all been there where you're like, I have this great idea, I'm going to do it, it's going to be great, and then you're like, no, it's too much. So I imagine that's what's happening. So I paused here because there's a face in the margin. This is not medieval, this is later. So someone, a reader, or sometimes children get their hands in here and draw things. It's so simple, it's sort of hard to tell, but clearly, like somebody drew a little face, which is always fun to see. Let's see, Lisa, are the strikeouts in contemporary ink? I see some subpuncting, the underdots, yeah, which is less clunky looking and used to subtly strike out text. So that's a good question. It's a little hard to tell. Let's see if we can find a spot. Let's keep, well, no, because I know, well, here's, okay. I don't see the underdotting here, but here we have some of this, the strikeouts. It's, it's hard to tell with something like that how far after it was done. Um, it it looks like a similar color, so it could be. It also could have been done by different people at different times. So Lisa, in her question, she mentions subpuncting, or it's also called underdotting, and that's a practice where when you want to delete letters, instead of striking them out, you just put dots underneath them. And then you know that this word is being deleted. And a little bit earlier on, we had both happening at the same time. And if we see it again, I can point that out. It is interesting that, I think what that means is that that was happening at different times. So one person is doing the underdotting and someone else is doing the strikeouts. Probably the underdotting would happen first, because I only saw a couple of words that had that happening, and then the strikeouts happening later. But how much later is really hard to say. Joyce says, at the end of some words, there are pencil marks. I didn't see any pencil marks, so let's see on the previous page. So there are you talking about these? Oh, maybe you can't sort of that. There are like hyphens at the end of the lines in some places. And that's done in ink, and it's when words are breaking over the line. So it's just like it's like being used like a modern hyphen. It's breaking over the line. I don't see any pencil markings, but we can keep looking. All right. Let's keep going, and we're still in A. Let's see. Oh, this is just so neat. Here's more deletions happening. There's a lot of deletions and addings. This is contemporary. This is a contemporary note there. I'm kind of hoping there will be more later ones. Oh, here's a thing I love to see. As part of the parchment preparation, so the parchment's made of animal skin and it is stretched on a frame and scraped and then dried, and that's sort of how it's a little more. There's more to it than that, but basically, and sometimes an animal skin will have a hole in it. Like think about like a bug bite or something. And so you want to control the stretch a little bit. And so what they would do is before they stretch it, they would sew the hole up. So the skin is off the animal, right? There's no healing is going to happen, but it still almost makes like a little scar there. And the little holes are where the thread was in there during the stretching process. And then once it's done, usually they take the thread out, although sometimes I have seen thread that's still there, which is pretty neat. I'm also noticing just on this page, we have some more of these O's here. These are black, and then it almost looks like it's like a light yellow ink, maybe. So they're coming back to do some more of this decoration here. I'm curious to see if it continues. It does not. There's no more on the next page. So maybe that was an experiment to see what was going to happen. All right. There we go. We're still in A. I want to get to B because there are actually, I've been told that there are puzzle initials at the start. Here we go. And more of these decorative O's there. So it's inconsistent. And there's other stuff happening over here. This one almost looks like DNA, like strands, like they were experimenting there. So there's more on this page. So yeah, the helix one is that's pretty neat. I'm thinking then this is giving me kind of more insight maybe into the process. So the choirs could have been parceled out to different groups and different people. So they were being done in different, it's not like one person sat down and copied out the whole thing. Or maybe that happened with the text and then the other parts were sort of handed out. Because this would have been done probably in like a workshop environment. And so some of them were better about maybe this group worked more quickly. And so they were able to get more of their little decorations in and also be more experimental because we're seeing this helix and these are also slightly different. And then over here, these are also different. They're not the little O's anymore. It's more, it almost looks like writing, except I don't think it's just sort of minims. I don't know. Maybe it's a little hard to tell. They're all close together. But then we start B, and now we have this puzzle initial there, which let's see if we can get a little bit closer because that's really beautifully done with the pen work there in the middle and also out on the side. Even the smaller ones have pretty nice pen work there. Oh, Lisa Rush, the PCIA system. Am I pronouncing that right? PECIA. That's workshops writing manuscripts by section. So that's the term for that. Yes. So, and that was a good way to get a lot of work done more quickly because you parcel it out to groups of people. More notes on the margins here, and I'm now you guys have me looking at this now every time. These strange little little fillers here. Let's see. Oh, this one almost looks like a little animal there. Like a little animal. I love it. And here's some that's being crossed out with red ink. So that's the red ink being used to do that. I don't think we've seen that before. No. This manuscript, it seems like it's one that you really want to look at up close because there's so much, even if I'm not reading the text. Let's see, another note there. Oh, and now we're in C. I guess there's just A was long or B was short, and now we're at C. So another initial. That's really nice. Does anyone know, did they have like template designs that they would use for the pen work, or were they just sort of going by feel? I've always been curious about that because it seems like maybe it's you just sort of learn how to do it and then go. I mean, there must be a sort of pattern to it so you don't overfill the space. All right. I'm noticing how the different, and it might be by section. This would be an interesting thing to look at, but the notes, the marginal notes are kind of formatted differently. So in the first choir at the start, we had the sort of triangular ones. So here's an example. And then the ones at the front, you know, these sort of triangular ones. And then here we have the notes with the sort of, I don't know, so like a flourish around it. But when we were a little earlier, there was red ink that was being used. Here we go. So here's like red ink. I don't know if you can see that it's red, but that's red. And I think there were even darker ones. So that could also be maybe from the workshop, you know, the section workshop there. So, sorry, somebody's bringing something into the room. Let's see. So here's another one of these with the black and the yellow. And let's see, something that I wish I knew, and you all have probably noticed this too, but I pointed this out earlier with the little, this one with the two dots and this and the thing. The notation is the same, or maybe the numbering is continuing because it looks like that's 6, and then and then but then this is 3. So I don't really know what that is, but it's interesting. Like clearly there's some kind of pattern that's going through and noting at specific places, and also these are also the same. So there's a lot of sort of notations that are going through in some kind of systematic way that I just don't know. So Lisa suggests, could it be capitula, chapter? So it could, like, that did occur to me, but it's happening in sort of in the middle. Oh, it's happening in the middle of a root, but it could be citing. It could be citing maybe because it's there's a term and there's a definition, and it could be that it's saying somewhere in a book of the Bible, and then they're coming in and saying what book it is. So, or what chapter it is in that book. So it could be that. It could be that. I would love to know. And actually, prudence, let's see. It's my understanding that there are rules for how they are done. I think you're talking about the Penn work, back to the Penn work. But a skilled rubricator probably pre-planned only the large ones. That was sort of my thought too, that these little ones, they probably just, it's probably second nature to some extent. And then the really large ones, you would have to think about it a little more hard. So let's see. C is longer than B. There. Oh, this is kind of interesting. That is interesting because this writing is different from that writing. But those initials look to me like those initials. So maybe something was left out originally and somebody else, not this scribe, but a different scribe, came in and wrote them down. And then this note at the bottom is later. This has been added later. And then we have these little decorations that look to my eye almost like a scorpion. I don't think it's a scorpion, but it looks scorpionish to me. So that is interesting to see there. And then I think maybe the same scribe who, thinking about going in the process, like this text was written, then someone else wrote that, and then those were written. And for some reason, they left the rest of that off, and someone much later came in and finished it off. So that could be. Yeah. Here we have 6 and 7 and then 26. So they're all it's all out of order, which makes me think that maybe it is a citation. Oh no, it's how is it 12:30 already? Is that right? That's amazing to me. Because we're still at the very start of the book. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize the time had passed so quickly. So we'll just take a quick look at maybe a couple of the other large initials we'll get here in the middle and see what we can do. And then I'm gonna, the P. We'll take a nice look at the P because P's are always nice. That's really nice. I like the way the blue and the red is there, and the I don't know what you call that, the tongue, the round part of the P. It's very pretty. So just a couple of notes, Bri. I have to brush up on my Latin. I would love to know what the notes are saying, as would I. Let's see. Prudence, a contemporary French calligrapher, is highly skilled in doing this type of filigree. He pre-plans his entire piece and subsections and freehands the small sections. And I bet that makes a lot of sense to me, at least, as a non-calligrapher. All right, so it is 12:30. Thank you all for joining me. I hope that this was fun for you, even if we only got to see a little bit. Again, the whole manuscript has been digitized, so please take a look at the images, and I hope that I will see you again next week, and have a great week, and take care.